So welcome everyone to our weekly SGC. So today we're very honored to have invited Dr. Ng Wai Chong to share with us on the topic, the emotions of the Arahants, the Four Immeasurables. So Dr. Ng Wai Chong is the founder and CEO of NWC Longevity Practice Private Limited, a social enterprise startup that provides consultancy and clinical services as it builds a self and mutual care community. Dr. Ng is an experienced meditator who studies the Dharma under Sali Dipankara. He's also the Vice President of Chakravala Meditation Center and Happy Village Society. So without further ado, can we invite Dr. Ng Brother Wai Chong to share, to lead us to pay respects to the Buddha?
Okay. Thanks, Wangchi. Okay, so allow me to pay respect to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tadiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tadiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tadiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. 5 precepts. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu miccachara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Sura meraya macca pamadatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Karaniya matta kusalena yang tang sang tang parang abhisamecha sakko uju cha suju cha suvacho cha samudu anatimani santu sakko cha suparo cha appakicho cha salahukavuti santindriyo cha nipako cha appakappo kulesu ananugitto Nachakutang samachari kinchi yena vinyu pare upavadeyung Sukhino vakemino hontu sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitatta Ye kejipana bhutatti tasavata varava anavasesa Dikhawa ye mahantawa machimarasaka anukatula Dittawa ye wa aditta ye chadure vasanti avidure Putawa sambhave siva sappe satta bhavantu sukhitatta Naparo parang nikupeta natimani takata chinang kanchi Biaro sana patiga sanya nanyamanya sadu kamicheya Mata yatani yang puttang ayusa eka putta manurakke evam pisappa bhutesu manasang bhavaye aparimanang mitang cha sabba lokasming manasang bhavaye aparimanang udhang ato cha tiriyang cha asambatang averamasapatang Tittang charang nisinno va sayano va yavatassa vigata mitto etang sating aditteya brahmamitang viharamita ditting cha anupagamma sila vadassanena sampanno kamesu vinaya ketang nahi jatu kappaseyang punareti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So, very happy to be here today, invited by Alvin. And he cannot make it today, but that's fine. Onchit is excellent too as a moderator. So today I'm sharing on the Four Brahma Vihara or the Four Immeasurables. Let me just share my slides. Okay. It's I think it's going to be a relatively short one. If there are some spare time, we can do meditation on the Four Brahma Vihara. Okay. About the title, The Emotions of the Arahant. Many years ago, I think it was 2008, Venerable Pa Aw Siador was in Singapore conducting a retreat in Shuangyin Si, together with his disciples like U Revata, U Mangala, Bante Visuddhachara, and many others. So I remember there was one night, Bante U Mangala was giving a talk. So for those who may not know him, he had been learning from various teachers for many years, and then I think in the late 90s, he started to learn from, or early 2000s, he started to learn from Pa Aw Siador in Pa Aw Forest Monastery, and he was practicing the Tutanga. And he's now the teacher of Tusita Hermitage, I think, in Sarawak. And in his talk, he mentioned something very interesting. He was talking about the Four Brahma Vihara in Mandarin, 四无量心, or 四梵住, right? So he was saying that after explaining everything, he said, these are the emotions of the Arahant. So that was very, that was something that I've not heard before. Somebody describing the Four Brahma Vihara as the emotions of the Arahant. So when I thought about it, I felt it was really apt because the Buddha himself practiced a lot of karuna, especially in a certain period of the night time. I think emerging from his rest, he practiced Mahakaruna Samapatti, the attainment of the great compassion to survey the whole world, to identify beings who are ready for enlightenment, and then he will make arrangement to meet the person or the being in order to share the Dhamma to them. And from the Nikaya resources, we know that the Buddha have disciples not just in the human realms, even the yakas, the devas, who are ready to learn, he would teach. And there are also stories from the scriptural sources that even animals can be helped by the Buddha, right? There's once he was giving a talk, and then a frog was so inspired that he died and became a deva. So the Buddha practiced compassion, a lot of it. So how does it work? The Arahants, they are fully enlightened. They are always mindful. They see beings as five aggregates and nothing but five aggregates, the mental aggregates and the physical aggregates, and arising and passing away moment to moment. So apart from insights and equanimity, why should there be metta, karuna, and so on? So apparently the Buddha practiced a lot of metta, karuna, and also we know Venerable Sariputta as well. So how does it work? So today I will explain the four Brahma Vihara or the four immeasurables from the scriptural sources. And then if there's time, we can practice the meditation on the four Brahma Vihara. So the four Brahma Vihara is really a meditation practice. Like all meditation practice, the mind is continuously mindful of an object, especially if you're practicing samadhi. For samadhi, when we practice for samadhi, we practice tranquility meditation or samatha meditation. The object of the mind is usually a concept, something that is not ultimately real, because ultimate realities are impermanent moment to moment. So usually it's a concept. Concepts are constructed stuff. If you analyze them, they are not that you understand it to be. For example, the most typical meditation object is breath. Okay, breath, if you deeply analyze them, they are actually just particles arising and passing away. So we don't really want to pay attention on those particles and the elements of the particles. We want to pay attention on breath as breath, touch it in a very superficial, general, generic, very mundane layman definition of breath. So that is the object of the breath meditation. So on all meditation, you need to have an object. So breath, for example, some people like to practice skeleton meditation. The object is a skeleton. So you can have a picture of a skeleton, or you can go to, perhaps if you go to some Thai forest monastery, they have got a set of real human skeleton for people to practice. Or if you have the benefit of going to the anatomy department, anatomy museum of the medical school, you can look at a whole set of human skeletons. So you can use a skeleton and just call it skeleton. Skeleton is a concept, because if you analyze it, it is also just earth, water, fire, and wind. But we don't want to analyze it. We just want to see skeleton as skeleton, and then you take the skeleton as object. Even when you close your eye, you can see the skeleton. So on all meditation object, you always have an object that trains the mindfulness. So in the practice of the four Brahma Vihara, which is also a tranquility meditation practice, what is the object? The object is a being, or a few beings, or many beings, or immeasurable beings, uncountable. Okay, so the object is a being. Being are also described as satta. Satta means with feelings, 有情, the Chinese term. Or Bhuta. Bhuta is all that is born. 众生. So you can consider beings as those that have got feelings, those that are born. So that means plants are not considered beings, but animals and humans, and those that we cannot see with our naked eyes, like devas, like ghosts, like hell beings, like brahmas. Okay, so these are beings. So these are the objects of the meditation of the four Brahma Vihara. So when we send loving kindness, we need to have an image of a being. So necessarily, when we take an image of a being, we are not analyzing the being as five aggregates. We're just seeing say on my screen here, I have on-cheat, I've got Chopin. So if I were to send metta, I have their image with me without analyzing further, taking it very superficially. So for example, if I want to send loving kindness to our parent, we can just recall that image and then keep the image steady on the mind, and then we send loving kindness. Image of a person is easy to be stable when our mind is light and respectful. When we try too hard, the image shakes and then get lost. Okay? So when we practice loving kindness, it's the same. Just recall a person and you just wish this person well, like a friend. So that is a meditation of the four Brahma Vihara, be it meditation on metta, karuna, mudita, or upekkha. Then gradually you can do more beings in the Visuddhimagga, which is like a manual on the practice leading to enlightenment. There are many systematic and approaches we can take to train the mind. So for example, we always start with ourselves, because if there is no self-love, you don't have any love for anyone else. The Buddha mentioned that he cannot see any being that loves others more than himself. So I'm paraphrasing, but that is what the Buddha said. So everybody loves themselves the most. Okay, but of course, in our day-to-day life, we do see people who hate themselves. Yeah, that's a long story. I don't think they really hate themselves. It's just that they love themselves so much that they are disappointed frequently or frustrated, and then their default is to always be totally critical of themselves so that they can improve. I'm not recommending this, but I think people do love themselves. It's just that they are blinded by many norms, from the families of origins or from the society and all that. So that's why some people don't love themselves. Okay, so we start with ourselves, and then we go on to the person that we are friendly with, easy to send loving kindness to, a being easy to send loving kindness to. So I also understand that Ajahn Brahm recommends very hard to send loving kindness to yourself. You can send loving kindness to a puppy or a kitten because it's easy to send loving kindness to. So the principle is the same. So you send loving kindness to the first person is someone that you are easy to send to, and then a neutral person, and then someone you have a grudge against. And then you remove the barriers. Everybody is equal, yourself and others, not different. And then you send loving kindness. And then you have to broaden your scope to beings in all directions. Okay. So this photograph is just to remind me to talk about what I just said. Loving kindness, or karuna, or mudita, or upekkha, the object is a being. So it's always being. So yeah. So it's very interesting that even in very advanced practice of the Buddhist practice, even though there is solitude and renunciation, the practitioner is never separate from beings. Even when we take precepts, when we, it's all about non-harm and in relation to beings. And for bhikkhus and bhikkhunis in ancient times, they are always associated with villagers who will support them. So beings, even when we are living in solitude or in absolute renunciation kind of lifestyle, we are connected with the world. And when we practice samatha practice, even though initially it's breath, skeleton, kasina, four elements, and so on, we will always be practicing at least loving kindness meditation, because in especially from the Theravada tradition, we always recommend the four protective meditation between samatha practice and vipassana practice, so that our mind can always be nourished by emotions such as loving kindness, compassion, mudita, and so on, as well as, of course, the sense of urgency when we practice mindfulness on death, and the sense of renunciation when we practice mindfulness on the foulness of the body, and also imbued with a lot of inspiration and faith when we practice mindfulness on the Buddha's quality. So these are four protective meditation, when loving kindness is one of them. Okay, so this is an important point to note. And so the enlightening journey is paved by many beings, okay? Even if a person is practicing individually. So these are a lot of words, but let me just read them out. These are from Digha Nikaya, but if you go to many other suttas, whenever the four Brahma Vihara or the four immeasurables are described, the description is very similar, almost like a standard. Okay, so let me just read this. Here, monks, a disciple dwells pervading one direction with his heart filled with loving kindness. Likewise, the second, the third, and the fourth direction. So above, below, and around. He dwells pervading the entire world everywhere and equally with his heart filled with loving kindness, abundant, grown great, measureless, free from enmity, and free from distress. Here, monks, a disciple dwells pervading one direction with his heart filled with compassion. Likewise, the second, the third, and the fourth direction. So above, below, and around. He dwells pervading the entire world everywhere and equally with his heart filled with compassion, abundant, grown great, measureless, free from enmity, and free from distress. Here, monks, the disciple dwells pervading one direction with his heart filled with sympathetic joy. Likewise, the second, the third, and the fourth direction. So above, below, and around. He dwells pervading the entire world everywhere and equally with his heart filled with sympathetic joy. Abundant, grown great, measureless, free from enmity, and free from distress. Here, monks, a disciple dwells pervading one direction with his heart filled with equanimity. Likewise, the second, the third, and the fourth direction. So above, below, and around. He dwells pervading the entire world everywhere and equally with his heart filled with equanimity, abundant, grown great, measureless, free from enmity, and free from distress. So this is Lock, Stock, and Barrel from Digha Nikaya, the Sutta number 13. And just to point out the main gist of this is that the practice of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity is developed by going in all directions. There's four directions, and then above and below, right? And then the entire world. The entire world includes not just the earth, but also in the scriptural sources, we understand that there is this Mount Meru, okay, and then around Mount Meru there are nine circular rivers separated by 9 circular islands concentrically around Mount Meru, and then and human beings and ghosts and animals are at the base of Mount Meru, and the middle you have got the 4 great king realms, and at the top of Mount Meru is the realm of Tawatingsa heaven, and then the Yama heaven, the Tusita heaven, and the other heavens as well as Brahma realms are all above it. So if you look at the current astronomy, it's very hard to understand it, but maybe we have to look even broader to look at the whole galaxies and the universe of many, many galaxies, the swirls of galaxies around. And because this description of the world was based on the divine eye of the Buddha, so it's very hard for us to say. But when we talk about the world, we're actually referring to the whole entire universe. And the heart is filled with either metta, karuna, mudita, or equanimity, abundant, grown great, and measureless. So it is immeasurable. And so the four Brahma Vihara described in the Theravada sources is also described as the four immeasurables in the Abhidhamma. And in Chinese Mahayana, it is known as 四无量, more so than 四梵住. Shi Fan Zhu is Brahma Vihara, Wu Liang is Wu Liang Xin. So this is the four immeasurables, also described here: measureless, free from enmity, free from distress. Okay. So when we practice loving kindness in this full development, we need to have a vision of beings in a whole expanse. So perhaps on earth and maybe even broader. Okay, so of course we don't have psychic powers, we don't have divine eye, so we can just close our eyes and meet all beings and allow the mind to naturally the visions of beings just pop up automatically. When the mind is very relaxed, you can actually you can call it imagination, but it's very natural, it's not contrived, it just happens, so many beings. Then and maybe this picture is from a satellite, I think. I suppose if a deva is looking down on earth, he may actually see a vision like this. And because of their divine eye, they can see many, many tiny beings, animals, ants, humans, ghosts, and so on. So they may see like that. So I suppose the Brahmas, we know, right? They are always practicing the Brahma Vihara, loving kindness. They're always sending loving kindness, compassion to us, to all beings. And when the mind is very, very quiet, we can feel it. So when we feel it, so perhaps the Brahmas are sending loving kindness like this, or the Tusita Devas, sometimes they will be looking down on all the beings, and maybe they have been a human before. They will be, and they are not enlightened like an Arahant. They have got attachment to old friends and families. So they may be sending loving kindness down to all of us, and then just wishing that we are well, free from danger, and so on. And the power of loving kindness, right? If you're around very well practiced teachers, you can feel the loving kindness, and our mind can be influenced by that, and we can have wholesome mind as a result. Maybe that is how blessings from heavenly beings happen. They may not be able to change our fate, but they can change our mind state, right? But we need to be soft, need to allow ourselves to be influenced by wholesome energies. So let me talk about metta. What is metta? I mean, it's very, we all have it, we experience it, especially if, say you have friends, you have got pets, you care about your parents, and you are a parent yourself. You will have this friendliness, this unconditional love to other people, okay, or animals. So we've all experienced it. So, but how do we describe it? Because if we don't try to describe it, sometimes, I mean, if we are all very natural and authentic and honest, actually we don't really need to describe. But sometimes because of attachment, we need to standardize our understanding of certain terms, like some people think that loving kindness is the same as, say, romantic love, right? Maybe they are, but how do we differentiate, right? So the definition is important. So these are found in also ancient sources, the commentary texts. Whenever a mental state is described or an ultimate reality described, the ancient commentary text, they like to use the instrument of the characteristic, the function, the manifestation, and the proximate cause. This is like a standard. So because metta is indescribable. It's like a taste of water. How do you describe the taste of water? Or taste of lemon when maybe someone from another island that nobody has touched before and they've never tasted lemon, they won't be able to understand lemon as lemon unless they taste it. But in order to help them to understand lemon as lemon, we will need to use the instrument of characteristic, function, manifestation, and proximate cause to describe. So in this case, the description of metta. So what's the characteristic of metta? The lack of ferocity, non-opposing, promoting the welfare of beings. Okay, non-opposing is to me, I interpret it as acceptance. The root of metta is actually adosa. So adosa is a Pali term for non-hatred. Non-hatred is the mind, is one of the characteristics of a wholesome mind state. The mind has no aversion, non-aversion. And non-aversion is an acceptance without opposing. Loving kindness is the same as non-aversion, but it is grown, embracing a being as the object. So it's non-aversion on an object, on a being. Okay, so we have non-aversion on say a rock, a tree, but when it is a being, we have the non-aversion can grow to become metta. Okay, so metta, the root is unconditional acceptance. So this is my own explanation at the bottom in yellow. Okay, so characteristic is at the top, lack of ferocity, non-opposing, promoting the welfare. And the function of loving kindness is to remove annoyance or fever, okay, and prefers the welfare of the being. Okay? Metta always have a being. I already emphasized this earlier. The object is a being. Manifestation is how does metta appear to the practitioner sending loving kindness, right? It feels as being agreeable and it removes the ill will, okay? The result, okay, so manifestation is agreeableness. The result is that of a removal of ill will. Proximate cause is seeing beings as lovable. And the far enemy is called hatred. Far enemy is a near enemy. These two are very interesting. They are all found in Visuddhimagga. Metta obviously is the opposite of hatred. So when we practice metta, we're actually eradicating hatred. However, there is a near enemy that if you're not careful, you can have the near enemy without realizing. And we thought that we're still having loving kindness. And the near enemy is selfish affection. So if, say, two friends, they have metta for each other, but perhaps gradually over the years, there is attachment. And influenced by the attachment, they have a lot of affection for one another. And they thought that it is metta until something happens and one of them is, they are separated. Then they'll feel suffering. That is not because metta hurts. It's actually because the metta has degenerated into selfish affection. Okay. Of course, it is very common, it is very natural, as long as one is not an anagami, a non-returner, we will have attachment to beings. Okay, so but this point is just to highlight the fact that loving kindness have got near enemies which frequently can imitate loving kindness, okay, which is selfish affection. And in the scripture, loving kindness is described using the analogy of a moon shining down equally on all beings. Okay, So if you want to practice loving kindness on all beings, and then you can see beings, going around their business everywhere, and then you can feel like you are like the moon, shining down on all beings equally without discrimination. The same loving kindness for your teacher, for your mother, for your friends, for your enemy, for yourself is the same moonlight. Okay, so that is the standard of loving kindness. Okay, so imagine the Buddha is sending loving kindness. That is the kind of loving kindness he sends. And about being self and others, the loving kindness taught by the Buddha, we do not love ourselves more than others, nor do we love others more than ourselves. So the practice of loving kindness, there is a lot of self-care and caring for others. There was a story also described in the Visually manga of 5 monks, 5 or 6, okay, monks. They were practicing in a cave. Then somehow there were a group of bandits that bashed in, and not knowing that they're monks, wanted to rob them. And in order to silence them, they need to kill them. But for some reason, they allow one to survive. Okay, I don't know the exact story, but I'm sharing with you the gist. So they asked each one of the monk, who shall I kill in order to allow one to survive? And none of the monk could say anything. They couldn't sacrifice themselves for others, nor can they sacrifice others for themselves. So that is the standard of loving kindness when we practice. Okay. So this is metta. And when we practice metta, when we practice for many people, you can visualize people like that. Okay. Now, karuna, compassion. The characteristic is the promotion of removal of suffering in others. Okay. The function is not being able to bear others' suffering. And the manifestation is non-cruelty. Okay. And then the proximate cause is seeing helplessness in those overwhelmed by suffering. And the success is cruelty subsides. And cruelty is the far enemy. And failure is when there is sorrow. So that's near enemy. Okay, so we send loving kindness. There was once somebody asked a question. Karuna can practice until first jhana, second jhana, third jhana. And first and second jhana obviously have lots of joy. Third jhana have lots of bliss and equanimity and no joy. How can compassion give rise to joy? Right? Yeah, it does. The joy of compassion feels like energy going through your body, like you're very moved. You can even have tears, but they're not tears of suffering. They're actually being moved. And if you check your mind, the quality is that of joy. Okay, so a lot of us enjoy doing volunteer work, enjoy serving others, helping others, and especially people who are very helpless because of the joy and happiness. But we cannot say we are joyful for their happiness. We can only say that this joy comes naturally when our whole being is suffused by the emotion of compassion. Okay? So there's no sorrow in compassion. If there's sorrow, we have taken the unpleasant feeling as permanent. Whenever we have compassion, we detect suffering in beings and understand the helplessness, and then taking the being as an object, karuna can arise. We would like to help the person. But if, say, accidentally, we feel the feeling, suffering, and then we have this aversion against the suffering. That's when we drop into sorrow, and then we can actually get angry, okay, with maybe the injustice or something. Okay, then we can also become a tyrant, fighting against other tyrant. So so the near enemy of karuna is sorrow. When we experience compassion fatigue, that is when we accidentally fall into the trap of taking feelings and beings as permanent, as self, and as and inherently pure. Okay, not seeing things as they really are. Okay. Yeah, so helplessness in beings, the proximal cause is seeing helplessness in beings. It requires wisdom. If you don't have wisdom, it's very hard for you to understand what helplessness really means. We may not be able to see the helplessness in a very wealthy, intelligent, say, very powerful CEO of a listed company. Okay, we may not be able to have compassion unless we have wisdom. Okay, the wisdom, you can see the helplessness of all beings, regardless of the superficial successes. Then, so you can actually see the helplessness, and then karuna can happen. Those things in yellows are my own thoughts, are just sharing. So if you have a lot of wisdom, you actually see all beings in this whole universe, everybody is struggling with helplessness. If nothing else, it is aging, sickness, and death, and rebirth. And the rebirth is helplessly dependent on the karma, and they may not realize it. And they did all sorts of things, not knowing that one day they will develop dementia, delirium, lack of oxygen to the brain, and have to die lonely. All their children, all their money, all their fame cannot follow them. They have to start afresh in a new realm, totally alone, So people don't know. So if you have compassion, you have got wisdom, you can see. Okay. So karuna and wisdom are closely linked. So when you practice karuna, same as metta, you look across, can see many animals, many humans, and perhaps those with the deep concentration or with divine eyes, you can even see three devas, earthbound devas, and even other heavenly beings and ghosts. Mudita. Mudita is sympathetic joy. So the characteristic is being happy, or the term is called glad, okay? Gladness at others' success. And function is being unenvious of other success, rejoicing in other people's success. Manifestation is the elimination of aversion against other people's success. And the proximate cause is seeing success in others. Okay, so the far enemy is aversion of other success. And the near enemy is this frivolous merriment, gaiety, fun, just happy. Okay, what's the difference between mudita and merriment? Merriment is a very archaic term, but it's really just frivolous happiness. So one of them, the object is a being, and recognizing their happiness and success, there's wisdom involved. Okay, this is one. Another one is the object is actually the happiness, and then they're addicted by the happiness, and they're happy with the happiness. So that is not mudita. Okay, that is just merriment. And if you were to analyze the mind state, mudita is extremely wholesome, very rich, uplifting. Okay, merriment is really just attachment to pleasant feeling, a lot of restlessness, and a lot of ignorance. That mind state. So being glad at others' joy when they perform good deeds is also included. So when we say sadhu, 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 for somebody, happy at giving offering to during Katina, or helping others, helping the poor, helping their parents, practicing filial piety, or caring for people of all walks of life, all religions, all ethnicities. We feel very happy for their good deeds. So that is mudita, gladness at others people's joy when they're practicing good deeds. If it's just happy at other people's good deeds, that's just wisdom. Okay, knowing that this is good deeds. But we're very happy with their success and joy, we feel there's mudita arising. Okay, so same. So actually all these pictures are interchangeable. I'm using all these pictures, so maybe later when we practice the four Brahma Vihara, you can have a vision of like you're sitting on Tusita heaven, looking down on earth. So it's like that. Okay. There are very beautiful gardens in the heavens. So like sitting, and then you look at human realms, and then you send loving kindness or karuna or mudita to all beings. Okay. So upekha. Upekha is emotion of being balanced. Okay, the mind is detached, impartial. Detached not in the sense of throwing away. It's just that you're not stuck at either side of things. It's a little bit different from aloba, which is non-greed, where the mind is just relinquish whatever attachment. That is a different kind of mind state. But upekha is balance, detached in the sense of not being sticky with any extremes, and impartial, treating all beings without discrimination, because for immeasurables, the objects are beings. It's not just concept. So all beings without discrimination, preferences or prejudices, looking upon all as equal. It is based on the understanding that all beings are owners of their own karma. As to their karma, karma is their womb, karma is their relations, karma is their refuge. These five descriptions are very helpful when we practice upekha. Maybe later, if I stop earlier at 2:30, then we practice the four Brahma Vihara together. So the near enemy is indifference. You see, upekha is not being biased. It feels like being indifferent, but it is not. Indifferent, a lot of time, is a certain aloofness born out of jadedness, of chronic cynicism, because being too attached, you need to be people to be grateful of you. I mean, you may not say it, but it is there. And then after a while, you feel very disappointed with everyone, with the government, with your friends, with everyone. And then you don't want to help anyone anymore. Okay, that is not upekha. Okay, that is just aloofness, indifference, because of ignorance and too much attachment, and got disappointed, and you hate the feeling of being disappointed, and then you adopt the posture of indifference. So the characteristic of upekha is conveying consciousness and mental factors evenly. So this is very interesting, very difficult for people to understand. So basically, upekha, the mind is one that is very balanced. The awareness and the ingredients of this awareness are balanced. It's like when we taste, say, maybe a soup, whatever we are cooking, a herbal soup. There's sufficient herbs, not too overbearing, a bit of salt, not too much, and then maybe other taste, sweetness and sourness to balance. So the taste is very balanced. So when we taste the soup, it is very balanced. Okay, so the water is like consciousness, and the ingredients are like the mental factors. They're all very balanced. So upekha is when the mind is very balanced. Okay. Yeah. This is to be 意会不可言传. So basically, you need to feel it. Okay. Upekha, when you practice the mental state of balanced mind. Okay, it's like that. Okay, that's balance. The function, it prevents deficiency and excess, prevent partiality. The manifestation is neutrality. So this is the description of the mind state, but the object is a being. Okay. and the mind is a very wholesome one. The state of looking on with equanimity, like a charioteer who looks on with equanimity at the thoroughbreds progressing even along the roadway. So this is an analogy found in the commentarial text to the Abhidhamma. Okay, so equanimity feels like, say you're riding a chariot and then the horses, they are riding in the right direction and they're at the right speed. You don't have to flop this side or that side to slow it down or to hasten it, and you just stay like that. Okay, when we practice meditation, we need a lot of this emotion. Okay, so this is the emotion of balanced mind. But when it is applied onto beings, this is upekkha. Okay, we have this balanced mind looking on all beings equally, impartially. Upekkha is very profound. It's described many times in many parts of the Buddha's teachings. So when it regards to all beings, we actually look at all beings. Okay, actually, metta, karuna, mudita, all these pictures, as I mentioned earlier, can be interchanged. Okay, so you can send loving kindness, karuna, mudita, upekkha to all beings in the whole universe. You can have this image in your mind, but preferably you should be able to see the beings, moving there with the face and so on. Okay. So there are many, many, many kinds of upekkha in the Buddhist scriptures, but all of them are under two categories. Upekkha as a description of feeling, and upekkha as the balance of the mind, the one that I mentioned just now. Upekkha as the feeling is number 6. Vedanupekka. Okay, we know feelings, the 5 aggregates, right? Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, and Vijnana. The third one is Vedana, feeling. Feeling is described as pleasant feeling, neutral feeling, and unpleasant feeling. Sukha, Dukkha, Upekkha in the middle. Okay, so upekkha of a feeling is one kind. And then the rest are all different descriptions, different contexts of description of the mind being balanced. So these are all from the Visuddhimagga. Chalangupekka describes the Arahant's equanimity towards objects of the 6 sense bases. So eye and color, okay, when an Arahant sees, right, the mind is very mindful and the wisdom is very strong. So you can see the color and the eye object and then the contact. And while doing that, the Arahant is equanimous. Okay? No delighting, no attachment at all. So there is no tremors. Okay, so it's all equanimous. Whereas if we are not, we always have a hint of attachment. We look at something first, we'll label it and call it something, and then we will have a hint of attachment, and then we let go and continue with our neutral, wholesome mind. But Arahant, always no attachment. The Brahma Viharupekka is equanimity as a divine abode, which is the mind applied to all beings, and then the mind is balanced. Okay, that is the upekkha of the 4 Brahma Vihara, which we are describing now. Bojjhang Upekkha is equanimity as a factor of enlightenment. So those of you who have studied the Dhamma systematically for longer, you would have heard of the 37 factors of enlightenment. And among the 37 factors of enlightenment, there are one set called the 7 factors of enlightenment. Okay, so the first one is mindfulness. The second is investigation of the Dhamma. The third one is joy. The fourth is energy. The sixth is tranquility. And then we have got concentration as the fifth is tranquility, concentration as the sixth, and equanimity as the 7th. So this is the equanimity of the 7 factors of enlightenment. It is also about balance of the mind. The mind is balanced. Okay. Virya Upekkha, the equanimity of energy, balance between striving and laxity. This is described in, I think, in Anguttara Nikaya, but also when we practice meditation. When we understand the Buddha's path to enlightenment as the Noble Eightfold Path, also known as the middle path. Sometimes our example is related to the practice of behavior and speech, which is neither practicing austerity like self-denial to the extreme, or practice complete sensual indulgence. Okay, then we say the balance, the middle way is in between the 5 precepts. But there's also a middle way when we practice meditation, and this is described here, the Viryu Upekha, where we practice mindfulness on the breath or the skeleton or the kasina or nian fo, or mindfulness on the Buddha's quality. We need to have energy to always keep the mind onto the object so that you can gain the momentum in order to develop samadhi. But sometimes when the energy is too much, we find ourselves very tense, and occasionally so tense that we actually can become uncomfortable and unhappy. You need to relax a little bit. You need to moderate your energy with equanimity. Okay, so the Buddha described it like I think like smelting or blacksmith work, right? You have to heat it up, and then sometimes you have to temper it with water to loosen it, to cool it down a little bit. So same, when we practice any kind of meditation, we need to strive with energy, but we cannot only have energy. We need to balance it with equanimity. So that is the Viryu Upekha. Sangha Upekha is the equanimity of formations. It is a state of very advanced degree of vipassana practice. After going through seeing 5 aggregates and their causes as impermanent suffering non-self, and feeling a strong sense of arising and passing away, and only passing away where you feel it's dangerous, it is actually disenchanting, and then we feel that we need to escape. And then gradually we come to a point where we look on all aggregates, past and present and future, as just impermanent suffering non-self, and our mind become really equanimous. So that is Sangha Upekha. Okay. And the number 7, Vipassana Upekha, is in the rest of the development insight. When we practice insight meditation, we actually observe phenomenon, good, bad, wholesome, unwholesome, arising and passing away in a very balanced way. Otherwise, your Vipassana will be frustrated and stop there. So you need to observe in a balanced way. So that is the equanimity of insight. Tatra Maja Tupekha is the balanced mind. It is a raw mental factor of Upekha. This is found in all the rest, except number 7. Jhana Upekha is the equanimity of the 3rd jhana, and Parisuddhupekha is the equanimity of the 4th jhana. 4th jhana, the equanimity has got both the balanced mind as well as the neutral feeling. 3rd jhana, the feeling is not neutral. The feeling is happiness, but the mind is very balanced. The equanimity of 3rd jhana is described as the moon that is nearly full, 3/4 full. The equanimity of the 4th jhana is described as the full moon. Okay, why is 3rd jhana described as equanimous when there's a lot of bliss? Okay, for those who have practiced to the 3rd jhana, you will realize that very different from 1st and 2nd. The 3rd jhana is very calm, very peaceful, and it feels like equanimous as the strongest taste. Even the bliss is very subtle, and the bliss is and this kind of subtle happiness is the happiest happiness, more than the joyous joy in the 1st jhana or the 2nd jhana. So the 3rd jhana equanimity is like a very it's something that is unmistakable. That's why equanimity of the jhana is prominent. But when you realize the 4th jhana, the equanimity is even stronger. It's like being frozen in a big iceberg. So that is the difference. But both have got strong equanimity. In fact, equanimity is found in all wholesome mind state, including 2nd jhana, 1st jhana, and also even when you pay respect to the Buddha, or you offer something to the Sangha. All these wholesome mind have balanced mind inside the mind. Okay, so these are a different description equanimity. But the one that we are describing today is the Brahma Viharupeka. Okay, number 2. Okay, now just answer a few questions. I've already answered them along the way. How to have love on an enemy? So we hate someone, or we're very disappointed with someone, or we're very frustrated until we're angry with somebody. Okay, so how do you have loving kindness on the person? You need to forgive. Okay? But what if you cannot forgive? You need to accept the person as he is. What if you cannot accept the person as he is? You need to understand the dependent origination of that person's behavior, why it happens. And that is where if you do not have complete wisdom to see dependent origination across the samsara, that's where we can be limited. That's where we may need some faith that nothing happens without a cause or condition. Then once we can start to have faith that everything have a cause and conditions, we can understand why certain people behave in certain ways. Okay. Also understand that, also have faith that it's all just 5 aggregates, right? So we can also understand that it's just 5 aggregates. Nothing defines anyone. No one is completely innocent of murder, including ourselves. If you remember your past lives, okay. So with faith, with understanding, then that's where we can begin to accept a person as he is. That's when we can begin to forgive a person as he is, and that's when we can begin to have loving kindness on an enemy. Okay. Second FAQ, how to have love on ourselves. Yes, so same as how to have love on an enemy. So ourselves, we need to forgive ourselves, right? But if you cannot forgive ourselves, how? We need to accept ourselves as we are. Cannot accept ourselves as we are, how? We need to understand our reason why we're like this. So understanding and faith in independent origination. Okay. So in our exploring of ourselves, we may realize that we are like this because we have certain past experience, either in this life as a child, or in the past, right? And because of those experiences, we might be emotionally charged, and then we learn lessons. And some lessons we learn are not correct, okay? Or that, for various reasons, we behave in certain way, our habits. So we need to always forgive ourselves. And a lot of, as I mentioned also, a lot of people, they can't seem to love themselves because they are a go-getter, a bit overexerted their lives, always striving very hard. Maybe because, just maybe, the way we were trained or educated was that we need to push ourselves to our limit. And we cannot rest on our laurels, cannot think that we are good enough. So always never good enough. And so we always have this problem. So if we can accept that as just maybe a skillful means, not really true, it's just a kind of a way that we can encourage ourselves to work even harder, then okay, we can see that as being relative. We know that our love for ourselves is unconditional. So no matter what we've done, no matter what we've been, no matter how rude or how unwholesome we have been, we always have love for ourselves, okay? Because that's the teaching of the Buddha, okay? So how to have compassion on people obviously successful and happy, I've already described. It requires a lot of wisdom. If you have wisdom, you look at beings in Brahma realm, you also can have compassion on them. Their eyes are on fires, Their ears are on fire, their mind is on fire, their body is on fire. On the fire of impermanent suffering and non-self. Okay. And then they can have a lot of wholesome energy, wholesome mind, but they have not escaped from the samsara of dukkha. Ultimately, they can spend millions of years as a Brahmas and the next millions of years as a Deva. And then after that could be hell being or animal beings. There are many examples like that. How to have compassion without sorrow. Okay, so that also requires a lot of wisdom. We need to see beings and their emotions as separate. Okay, and we need to see emotions as just like weather, like storm, like rains. They come and go. And then we need to see beings as multifaceted, not just feelings. They've also got their habits, their will, their sankhara, their intention. And then they have also got their wholesome states of mind and their effort towards the good. So when we see all these as like that, we see a being helpless, and then we can have loving kindness with them, and we don't attach to the being, nor are we attached to the feeling, then the compassion, there's no fatigue. Okay? It's really right attention, seeing all phenomenon without sticking onto them. This is a matter of practice, but also understanding that when it should happen, it's never too late. We just reflect on it, acknowledge it, recognize it, contemplate impermanent suffering non-self, and then let go. Okay? And then continue with compassion, because compassion is taught by the Buddha. Okay? What's the difference between mudita and merriment? Okay, I've also explained already. One is seeing being and then having understanding that successes and joy is a beautiful thing, and then we are happy for the being. Merriment is attachment to happiness. Okay. The application of the four Brahma Vihara in our daily life. Self-care, okay? Loving kindness to ourselves, compassion to ourselves, supported by forgiveness, by acceptance, by understanding and faith. Okay? Sense of purpose. When your heart is filled with compassion, your life will never be boring. There will always be something meaningful to do. I mean, we are already born as a human being and we don't know how long we're going to live. Instead of living because we are attached, might as well live because we like to, because we cannot stand helplessness in others. We cannot stand helplessness in beings. So let this be the driving force for this existence. When this is a driving force for this existence, your mind is selfless and it will drive you towards the practice until the end of dukkha for oneself and all beings. And this karuna as a driving sense of meaning and purpose is sustainable even on the last breath when you're disabled lying in bed for 10 years, require someone to feed you and bathe you. If your mind is always having a sense of karuna, of loving kindness, you can enjoy your life even then, and that life is still meaningful. When we have compassion for ourselves and for people around us, we have metta for ourselves and metta for all beings around us. And then every moment we are sending loving kindness and compassion. Every moment we are trying to realize the truth as taught by the Buddha. Every minute of being dependent, suffering from pain and so on, become meaningful. And we don't have to request for euthanasia or other kinds of things. So the sense of purpose is really important for us to have a coherent existence. The source of joy. Yeah, so this is where the emotions of the Arahant come in. So loving kindness and compassion and mudita is like a bottomless source of a spring of happiness for us. So even as we practice and become wiser and wiser, insight ripening and ripening, metta and karuna and mudita is always a source of joy for the Arahant, even though they're not attached to those emotions. Okay? Joy is useful. Joy and happiness are useful because they are inspiring. It can affect others. It can also relieve people from suffering, including ourselves. Stability in the faces of success and failures. Yeah, the practice of upekkha, okay, upekkha itself, the balance of the mind, can be applied on the 8 worldly winds. So you know about the 8 worldly winds? The wind of gain and loss, pain and pleasure, fame and disrepute, praise and blames. Okay, so these are the 8 worldly winds. So when you have balance of the mind, you are stable regardless of this. So same, when we have upekkha applied on beings, we won't have compassion fatigue. When we help someone and the person is helped, we don't feel elated and egotistical. If we help someone and it fails, we don't feel depressed or fatigued from compassion. So upekkha, we always recognize that all beings are owners of their own karma. Okay? And all these emotions, happiness is found in metta, karuna, and mudita. Happiness is the proximate cause for concentration. So if we practice loving kindness, compassion, and mudita frequently, we can practice samatha easily, okay? Because it's a proximate cause for samadhi. Then the rest of the benefits of metta, all from the scriptures. Let me just go through, and then we can have a short practice. Okay. So, so some of us can feel very sleepy now because of metta. Okay. So if you can sleep well if you keep sending loving kindness until you fall asleep. Okay. And then when you fall asleep with loving kindness, you wake up feeling well. Okay. If you're not likely to have nightmares. And when you send loving kindness, especially to your own body, you find that all the body become relaxed. Okay. Even animals and celestial beings feel drawn to you. Okay. And spirits will protect you. Fire, poisons, and weapons will not harm you. There's a story from I think it's Sirima's story. Sirima, I can't remember the other lady's name. She was sending loving kindness. Sirima was very jealous. She was a prostitute, I think a high-class prostitute. It was spending like a whole month with the husband of this lady who wanted to offer to the Buddha and his disciples so that he engaged Srima to take care of her husband, and then she could cook and organize the dana. And but the husband looked at his wife and sort of smile in a derogatory sense. This stupid woman, spend one whole month preparing to offer a group of monks and let me enjoy this prostitute. So he smiled at the wife looking from his veranda. So Sirima, the prostitute, was very jealous of the lady of the house. So went to the kitchen, poured a whole pot of boiling oil onto Sirima. But Sirima was sending loving kindness. She perfected loving kindness and she was unhurt. Recently, my friend, there's a friend of mine who was very scared of vaccination, needle actually. So somehow I said, what I do is I send loving kindness to the nurse who is giving me the injection. So she tried it and it worked for her. So next time you go for vaccination, very scared of needle, you just send loving kindness and then it doesn't hurt. Same. to your dentist. Okay. So your mind immediately becomes calm, and the metta stimulates a friendly feeling and helps us calm down. Your complexion brightens, and you die with a clear mind. And apparently, if you practice loving kindness a lot, your new life you'll be very good looking. Okay, you die in peace. Okay, so I've just shared the four immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, mudita, upekkha, and explain that they are actually meditation. And this meditation has many advantages in our day-to-day life. And and yeah, also they got near enemies, quite easily misunderstood. Okay, so now we have some time. Shall we practice some meditation? Okay, so we do the four Brahma Viharas. We'll do loving kindness, compassion, and then mudita. Then finally, we will practice equanimity. Okay. Okay, so let us sit upright. Okay, either on your chair, on the floor, or on the sofa. Upright as in the body upright, confidently upright, without being stiff like a soldier or slouching, just upright. And the hands you can clasp onto one another or just place on your knees. Okay. Okay, then we close our eyes. So for the next 15 minutes to 20 minutes, we shall devote our time to the practice of meditation. And we will put aside our thoughts, good or bad, related to the past or the future. And if we have to, we will attend to them later. But for this 15 to 20 minutes, the time is committed to the practice of the Dhamma. Let us begin by relaxing our bodies systematically, starting from the top of our head. Let us use the mind to feel the sensation on our head, on the scalp, at the top of our head. Feel the texture, the tone, the temperature, and perhaps the tiny movements on the skin. So feel the muscles flowing, especially as the muscle relax around the head, down to the side at the temples, and the front on our forehead. Feel the muscles flowing around the eyes, in the eye sockets, allowing the eye and the muscles around it to soften as if to melt. And feel the muscles melting around the cheeks and the jaw and the neck, releasing all its tension accumulated over the last 1 week. Allowing the spinal cord to recoil into its natural, slightly curved position. Allowing the head and the neck to become freed. And feel the muscles on our shoulders melting away, down our arms to the sides, to the elbows, flowing down to the forearms, the wrists, and the fingers, as if the muscles are falling off the bones. Of course, they don't, but just feel the muscles soft and relaxed. And feel the body, the muscles on our chest and our back, flowing and loosening and becoming very, very flowing. And the chest, breathe naturally, freely. And feel the abdomen soft and anchored, as if all the organs inside are just resting one on top of the other. anchored and plastered onto the base of our abdomen. Feel the muscles around our buttocks, our thighs, or the knees, soft and supple, plastered down onto our seats. As the muscles flow down the legs, the ankles, and the feet, as if they are all melting onto the floor. And similarly, feel our minds. Feel the minds at our heart base, in the center of our chest. Feel the mind soft, like water, like the water in a pond at the top of a mountain. When the wind has stopped, there are no ripples, and the water is peaceful, and the mind becomes mirror-like, reflective of all phenomena, without participating, without judging, and without controlling. And such is the mind of a meditator. And gently let the mind take a step back and observe ourselves, as if we have our mind slightly above and slightly behind ourselves, looking down upon ourselves. Seated here, a man or a woman, and sincerely meaning every word, may this person, regardless of what he or she has done or has been, may this person be free from danger and be safe, be free from mental suffering, be free from physical suffering, and may this person be well and happy, keeping the vision of ourselves lightly, nonchalantly on our minds. Perhaps we can even see our faces smiling and showering the whole body with loving kindness, cleansing every cell and every pore, and allowing every cell and every pore to accept every ounce of loving kindness, for we deserve all. For this is the teaching taught by the Buddha. For all beings, ourselves included, deserves unconditional loving kindness. And allow the mind to expand outwards, visualizing our family in this household, and perhaps allow the mind to penetrate the walls of our house. Visualize our neighbors in their homes and people on the streets, at the bus stops, in vehicles, on the trains, in the marketplaces, in the community, the whole country, visualizing people as if we are like a drone or an eagle or the moon shining down on all Singaporeans, regardless of race, language, religion, nationalities, rich or poor, young or old. May all Singaporeans and all people living here on this island be free from danger and be safe. just like ourselves. May they be free from mental suffering, physical suffering. And may all of us be well and happy, and allow the mind to expand and embrace the whole world across the continents, the great oceans, the countrysides and the cities, people of all ethnicities, of all religions, of all nationalities. May all people living on this planet be free from danger and be safe. Have a vision of people in the cities or in the countryside. May all people be free from mental and physical suffering. And may all of us be well and happy. And let the mind expand even wider in all directions across the entire space of the universe. Wider and wider, immeasureless. All beings, humans and animals, devas and brahmas, ghosts, asuras, and beings in hells, across the whole universe, whose shape and size is unfathomable. May all beings in this whole entire universe be free from danger and be safe. Be free from mental suffering. Be free from physical suffering. And may all beings be well and happy. And gently, let us recognize that all beings are subject to the forces of samsara, of karma, of attachment, of ignorance, helplessly arising and passing away, microscopically as well as across time and space. May all beings be free from the suffering of helplessness, of impermanence, of being conditioned. Have a vision of all beings, of humans, young and old, of animals, of devas and brahmas, of hungry ghosts, and beings in hell, having crossed suffering to the suffering of impermanence, to the suffering of being conditioned. All beings are subject to limitless samsara. May all beings be free from samsara. Subject to aging, to sickness and death. all beings. May all beings be free from suffering. And gently, let us visualize the beings smiling, engaging in wholesome deeds, serving their parents, serving others, paying respect to the Buddha, enjoying their lives in the good planes, or exhausting their unwholesome karma in the lower realms, one day at a time. And let us rejoice at their happiness and the releasing of their suffering. May all beings not be separated from their good fortune, from their good merits, and from their happiness. For happiness is rare, merits are rare, good fortunes are rare. May all beings not be separated from their happiness and their good fortunes. And gently, with the vision of all beings, happy or unhappy, meritorious or suffering, having a vision of all these beings, reflect the teaching of the Buddha that all beings are owners of their own karma, heirs to their own karma. Karma is their origin. Karma is their relations. Karma is their refuge. Allowing the mind to deepen in its wisdom and silence. And gently, let us bring the mind back to our world, back to our homes and to our bodies. Bring the mind back to our bodies. Feel the body relax, soft and supple, and the mind pure and happy. Determination made with a pure mind will come true. May the merits of the meditation be a support for enlightenment. And at our own time, we may open our eyes and end the meditation. So that was a short, rather cursory practice of the Four Brahma Vihara, but I hope it is beneficial for you. Yeah, so are there any questions on the practice, on the lecture just now?
Hello, Dr. Wai Chong. Thanks for the talk. I have a few questions actually.
Yeah, Hui Wen.
I want to ask just now, you mentioned the like if you practice the Karuna meditation, then sometimes you may be moved.
Yeah. Yes.
Is it like a byproduct?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. Being moved is a joyful feeling. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, good. Yeah, I use that to describe the fact that Karuna is joyful. Yeah.
So like it's normal if like you tear a bit, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I thought like I was a bit crazy.
No.
I thought like why last time I did. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the tears are actually tears of joy, even though the body is not smiling or laughing. But if you examine the mind is very joyful in a very, very wholesome, very holy way. And it is very, very energizing. It helps us to do a lot of things. So those emotions are encouraged. Yeah. Just but sometimes we are addicted to the emotion and we keep doing a lot of service. And then before we know it, we're actually attached to joy or attached to people's feelings. And then we become okay. I used to be a social activist. Okay. It's not bad, but sometimes you can overdo and become an angry social activist. It's not good. You become destructive.
Then like my other question is right, because just now you mentioned the like the Brahma Viharas as in like the jhanas. Then like if we do a brief practice just now, there's like no jhana. So is it like how is it like different?
Okay, it is still very good.
Okay.
Concentration is a gradual thing. Okay, we increase our concentration means the mindfulness on the object becomes more and more continuous rather than more and more distracted. So when we are mindful on an object, okay, say this is the object, this is the mind being mindful, right? We are always mindful and then distracted and then mindful, distracted. The mind may not be so mindful. Not mindful is like that. This is mindful, okay? Mindful, distracted, and like that. Okay, so sometimes mindful for a long time, distracted a little bit, mindful for a long time. So we're getting more concentrated. So when we're in jhana, it's mindful continuously. Okay. From this to jhana is gradual. Okay, it's not sudden. Okay, the mind sinks onto the object when we have mindfulness, and gradually as our concentration deepens, the mind will start to, okay, usually you will start to experience joy and happiness, and then you can actually perceive light. But that's not jhana also, until the mind is continuously stuck and the mind is totally engrossed. So throughout this whole period, there is concentration developing more and more. So all these concentration are good concentration. In order to realize Nibbana, we need concentration. Not always need to be jhana. Near to jhana is also possible to be enlightened. Yeah. So for a short practice, I unless some of us have got a strong practice in the past, we don't really expect jhana here. Okay, what we can expect is the mind have continuous mindfulness that you feel happy about it and you get a hang of it. And if you like it, you continue practice. Then one day you can realize jhana very gradually.
Sorry, I have a few more questions.
Yes.
So like, because just now when I was I think the initial part was the loving kindness. Then after that you mentioned about like contemplating on that all beings are subject to their karma also, right? So I realized like my mental state went from like being a bit happy to a bit sad. Then I don't know whether I was doing correctly.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay. That is good. Okay, basically your mind was able to shift that you can have the wisdom to know that being subject to karma is a problem. Okay, it's a problem is in the existence of all beings. So by recognizing that, that is very helpful. Okay. And but if you're able to focus on the beings and then transform the mind from being focused on the suffering to focus on the beings, to wish them to be released from helplessness, then the mind transit from metta to a bit of aversion and then become karuna. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Try
okay.
next time.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
There's a subtle point here for all of us when we practice loving kindness, compassion, and so on. At the beginning of this practice, there's a little bit of unwholesome mind. We regard beings as real and palpable, and really we can have wrong view that beings are beings. But that's just a short moment. Then quickly we transit into wholesome mind when we just send loving kindness or compassion. So the short bit of unwholesomeness is part and parcel of this practice. When we are attached to beings.
Mm.
Yes, Sai Kiang.
Thank you, Brother Wai Chong. Just now when you are guiding us, right? If let's say we are doing it ourselves,
Yeah.
so we'll be mentally thinking, and is it advisable to listen to a guide or to do it on your own? I mean, as a practice.
Okay. Generally, it's better to practice without guide. Otherwise, in the future, you always need guide. Yeah. So, but it is true, a lot of beginners, they prefer to have guidance. Then it's easier. I notice a lot of app and production from the Western practitioners of mindfulness. They use recording for guided meditation. I suppose their motive is for stress management, so that's fine. But for us, if we want to practice for, say, one day, when we find ourselves all alone, and then that the only thing we can control is our mind, then we like to practice meditation, and that we can do it even without money, without electricity, without broadband. I think that is much more sustainable. Say one day we get COVID and we're isolated in somewhere. And then we want guided meditation, but the nurse cannot hear us because we are intubated. No. So then we need to practice without guidance. So
my question is, if you are doing it, I mean, we are guiding ourselves.
yes.
We have to follow the sequence of metta, then followed by karuna, and then mudita and upekkha. Or is it okay that we just do, purely metta for today, and then maybe another day we do karuna and just karuna?
Yes, we can. We can just do metta, or just do karuna, or just do mudita. For upekkha, if you just want to do for the sake of the feeling of upekkha, also can go directly. But if you're practicing for jhana, upekkha can only be practiced after the third jhana of the metta, karuna, or mudita. After that, then you reflect on all beings are owners of their own karma, then you attain to the fourth jhana of upekkha. But if we just want to do cursorily, like today, any one of the four is okay.
And then just now, at first when you guide us, like visualize yourself from, slightly higher and behind.
Yes, behind,
and
yes.
just looking at ourselves. And then you mentioned that you can look at your face, but if the face doesn't come out, but just a dark figure, then slowly you say penetrate through the walls to the neighborhood and things like that. And then I try to raise myself up, but it seems quite restrained, like not able to go really high to like you see the whole view of that. So what is your advice for people that can't really visualize, far and wide?
Okay. When the mind is very soft, it is very wieldy, very pliable. It can look in front, look behind, go all the way to the heaven and look down on human beings. Okay, when the mind is very soft. But sometimes when we have a habit of maybe putting energy, so sometimes we become a bit stiff. That's also okay. You do a simpler one, you just visualize yourself as if you're looking yourself in the mirror. Okay, then you can visualize your neighbors as if you are a CCTV in their houses, like that. Okay, then you just visualize. And then if you want to visualize all beings, you cannot go up, right? You can put yourself on an aeroplane and then look down. Okay, so use skillful means, these tricks. But the idea is really just to have the image. You can also have a picture like just now when I look at a lot of people on the picture, also good. Yeah. Yeah, it's very childish in a way, when you practice this, it's just let your imagination run wild. But who knows? I mean, there are a lot of people near that experience, right? Their mind can travel up and then look at the surgeon, look outside the operating theater. It's very interesting when the mind is when it's very pure and very wholesome, like in deep concentration, the mind is like magical, so we never know. Yeah.
The mind is just too stiff.
Yeah, it's okay. Steve has got stiff way of doing things.
Anyway, thank you for the share.
Yeah. Yeah, meditation is good to be like a child, doing it for the first time. Yeah. Nobody, you don't have to show anyone how, nobody can tell. It's all very confidential. Yeah. So no question, we can end early today. Okay, so we can share merits.
Okay, let me start the slides again. Okay.
Okay. Etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe dewa anumodantu sabba sampati siriya etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang Sabbe Bhuta Anumodantu Sabba Sampati Siriya Etavata Cha Amhehi Sampadang Punya Sampadang Sabbe Satta Anumodantu Sabba Sampati Siriya. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. So may we dedicate the merits to all beings, to all people going through this difficult period of pandemic, and also people suffering for all reasons. May they all be released from their suffering, and may these merits be a support for our path towards Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.